The image of the stoic, unbreakable man who bears his burdens in silence has been a cultural archetype for millennia. From ancient warriors to modern-day leaders, society has consistently celebrated men who appear invulnerable, who can weather any storm without showing weakness or vulnerability. Yet beneath this facade of strength often lies profound emotional pain that remains hidden from the world. This phenomenon, where men perceived as strong deliberately conceal their suffering, represents one of the most complex and tragic aspects of masculine psychology in contemporary society. The question of why strong men hide their pain extends far beyond simple cultural expectations. It touches upon fundamental aspects of human psychology, including identity formation, emotional regulation, social bonding, and the intricate relationship between public persona and private experience. Understanding this phenomenon requires examining the psychological mechanisms that drive men to suppress their emotional experiences, the social and cultural factors that reinforce this behavior, and the profound consequences this concealment has on their mental health, relationships, and overall well-being. The multifaceted psychological reasons behind why men perceived as strong, whether due to their leadership roles, physical capabilities, emotional resilience, or social status, often choose to hide their pain rather than seek support or express vulnerability, reveal a complex web of interconnected factors. Various psychological theories, research findings, and clinical observations illuminate the intricate interplay of elements that create and maintain this pattern of emotional concealment, from early developmental experiences to contemporary social pressures that shape masculine identity and emotional expression. Traditional masculine identity formation. The foundation for understanding why strong men hide their pain lies in the process of masculine identity formation. From early childhood, boys are socialized into specific gender roles that emphasize emotional restraint, independence, and strength. This socialization process, known as gender role socialization, creates what psychologists term traditional masculinity, or hegemonic masculinity, a set of cultural norms that define what it means to be a real man in society. Traditional masculine identity is built upon several core pillars that directly impact emotional expression. The first pillar is emotional restriction, which dictates that men should not display emotions perceived as feminine, such as sadness, fear, or vulnerability. Instead, anger is often the only emotion culturally sanctioned for male expression, as it aligns with notions of strength and dominance. This restricted emotional range creates what psychologist Ronald Levant termed normative male alexithymia, a condition where men have difficulty identifying, experiencing, and expressing emotions due to socialization rather than inherent inability. The second pillar involves the emphasis on independence and self-reliance. Men are taught from an early age that seeking help is a sign of weakness, and that true strength comes from handling problems alone. This creates what researchers call self-reliant schema, deeply ingrained beliefs that equate asking for help with failure and inadequacy. For men who have built their identity around being strong and capable, admitting pain or seeking support can feel like a fundamental threat to their sense of self. The third pillar centers on the concept of invulnerability. Traditional masculinity promotes the idea that real men are impervious to emotional harm and can withstand any challenge without breaking. This invulnerability myth creates enormous pressure to maintain a facade of strength, even when experiencing significant internal distress. Men who have successfully cultivated an image of strength often feel they have too much to lose by revealing their vulnerabilities. The strongman's dilemma. Men who are perceived as particularly strong face unique psychological challenges when it comes to emotional expression. These individuals often occupy positions of leadership, responsibility, or authority, whether in their families, workplaces, or communities. Their strength may be physical, emotional, intellectual, or social, but regardless of its nature, it becomes a central component of their identity and how others perceive them. The strong man's dilemma emerges from the conflict between internal emotional experiences and external expectations. While these men may experience the full range of human emotions, including pain, fear, sadness, and uncertainty, they feel compelled to maintain their image of strength. This creates what psychologists call emotional labor, the effort required to manage and regulate emotional expression to meet social expectations. This dilemma is particularly acute because strong men often carry additional burdens beyond their own personal struggles. They may be responsible for supporting family members, leading teams, or making decisions that affect others' lives. Admitting their own pain or vulnerability can feel like betraying those who depend on them, creating a sense of responsibility that extends beyond personal considerations. Furthermore, strong men often develop what can be termed strength-identity fusion, where their sense of self becomes so intertwined with their image of strength that any admission of weakness feels like a complete identity crisis rather than a normal human experience. This fusion makes it psychologically dangerous to reveal pain, as it threatens the very foundation of who they believe themselves to be. Cultural messaging and social expectations. The broader social and cultural context plays a crucial role in reinforcing why strong men hide their pain. Western societies in particular have long embraced what sociologist R.W. Connell termed hegemonic masculinity, a dominant form of masculinity that subordinates other forms of masculine expression and emphasizes traits like emotional control, physical strength, and competitive success. Cultural messaging about masculinity is pervasive and begins early in life. Boys receive explicit and implicit messages about appropriate emotional expression through media representation, family dynamics, peer interactions, and institutional settings. Phrases like "boys don't cry," "man up," and "be strong" become internalized as fundamental truths about masculine behavior. These messages are reinforced through positive reinforcement, when boys suppress emotions and negative consequences when they express vulnerability. Media representation particularly powerful in shaping expectations about strong men. Heroes in films, literature, and other media are typically portrayed as emotionally stoic individuals who face adversity with unwavering resolve. When these characters do experience pain, they either overcome it through sheer willpower or channel it into action rather than emotional expression. This creates unrealistic expectations about how real men should handle suffering. The workplace culture also significantly contributes to the concealment of pain among strong men. Professional environments often reward emotional control and penalize perceived weakness. Men in leadership positions may fear that showing vulnerability could undermine their authority, affect their career advancement, or damage their professional reputation. This is particularly true in male-dominated industries where traditional masculine values are explicitly valued. The performance of strength. Strong men often find themselves trapped in what sociologist Irving Goffman would describe as impression management, the ongoing effort to control how others perceive them. This performance of strength becomes a continuous psychological burden, requiring constant vigilance to maintain the facade of invulnerability. The performance aspect is crucial, because it transforms authentic emotional experience into a social role that must be maintained. Strong men learn to compartmentalize their pain, developing what psychologists call emotional compartmentalization, the ability to separate and contain different aspects of emotional experience. While this can be adaptive in certain situations, chronic compartmentalization can lead to emotional numbing and disconnection from authentic feelings. This performance is reinforced by the reactions of others. When strong men do occasionally show vulnerability, they may encounter discomfort, disappointment, or even rejection from those who've come to depend on their strength. These reactions serve as punishment for emotional expression and reinforce the message that pain should remain hidden. The performance of strength also involves the development of specific coping mechanisms that prioritize external appearance over internal well-being. Strong men may become experts at deflecting personal questions, minimizing their struggles, or redirecting conversations away from their emotional experiences. These skills, while effective for maintaining their image, can become barriers to genuine connection and support. Social support systems and gender differences. Research consistently shows significant gender differences in social support systems and help-seeking behavior. Women typically have more extensive and emotionally intimate social networks, while men's friendships often focus on shared activities rather than emotional sharing. This difference in social support structures creates additional barriers for men seeking to express or process their pain. Strong men may face particular challenges in developing meaningful social connections because their image of strength can intimidate others or create distance in relationships. People may assume that strong men don't need support or may feel inadequate in comparison, leading to superficial relationships that don't provide opportunities for emotional expression. The concept of emotional labor in relationships also plays a role. In many relationships, women are expected to provide emotional support while men are expected to be the source of strength and stability. This dynamic reinforces the idea that strong men should be givers rather than receivers of emotional support, making it difficult for them to access help when needed. Male friendship patterns, often characterized by what researcher Jeffrey Grief calls shoulder-to-shoulder rather than face-to-face interactions, may not provide adequate opportunities for emotional expression. While these friendships can be meaningful and supportive, they may lack the emotional intimacy necessary for sharing deep pain or vulnerability. Cognitive and emotional regulation strategies. Strong men who hide their pain typically employ sophisticated psychological mechanisms to manage their emotional experiences. These mechanisms, while initially adaptive, can become problematic when used chronically and excessively. Understanding these mechanisms provides insight into the psychological processes that maintain pain concealment. Cognitive reappraisal is one of the primary strategies used by strong men to manage emotional pain. This involves reframing painful experiences in ways that minimize their emotional impact. For example, a man experiencing grief might focus on the practical aspects of loss rather than the emotional devastation. While reappraisal can be healthy when used appropriately, excessive reliance on this strategy can lead to emotional numbing and disconnection from authentic feelings. Suppression is another common mechanism involving the conscious inhibition of emotional expression. Strong men often become highly skilled at suppressing outward signs of distress while maintaining their composure. Research by psychologist James Gross has shown that while suppression can be effective in the short term, it requires significant psychological resources and can lead to increased physiological stress and decreased well-being over time. Compartmentalization allows strong men to separate different aspects of their experience, creating mental boundaries between their pain and other areas of their lives. This can enable them to function effectively in professional or social settings while experiencing significant personal distress. However, chronic compartmentalization can lead to fragmentation of the self and difficulty integrating different aspects of experience. Intellectualization involves approaching emotional experiences from a purely rational perspective, focusing on understanding and analyzing rather than feeling. Strong men may become experts at discussing their challenges in clinical or analytical terms, while avoiding the emotional reality of their experiences. This mechanism can provide a sense of control, but may prevent genuine emotional processing and healing. Defense mechanisms and psychological protection. From a psychodynamic perspective, strong men who hide their pain often employ various defense mechanisms to protect themselves from psychological threat. These unconscious strategies serve to maintain psychological equilibrium, but can also prevent authentic emotional experience and growth. Denial is perhaps the most fundamental defense mechanism employed by strong men facing pain. This involves refusing to acknowledge the existence or significance of painful experiences. The denial may be partial, acknowledging the facts of a situation while minimizing its emotional impact, or complete, refusing to recognize that any problem exists at all. Projection involves attributing one's own painful emotions to others, allowing the individual to maintain their sense of strength while still acknowledging that pain exists. A strong man might focus extensively on others' problems while remaining blind to his own suffering. This mechanism allows for some emotional expression while maintaining the facade of personal invulnerability. Reaction formation involves expressing the opposite of what one truly feels. Strong men might become increasingly jovial or helpful when experiencing pain, using these positive behaviors to mask their internal suffering. This mechanism can be particularly confusing for others who may not recognize the underlying distress. Sublimation, considered one of the more mature defense mechanisms, involves channeling painful emotions into productive activities. Strong men might throw themselves into work, physical exercise, or creative pursuits as a way of managing their pain. While this can be adaptive, it becomes problematic when it's the only mechanism for dealing with emotional distress. Attachment styles and emotional regulation. Attachment theory provides another lens for understanding why strong men hide their pain. Early attachment experiences with caregivers shape how individuals approach relationships and emotional regulation throughout their lives. Men who develop avoidant attachment styles may be particularly prone to hiding their pain as adults. Avoidant attachment typically develops when caregivers are emotionally unavailable or rejecting of emotional expression. Children learn that emotions are unwelcome and that self-reliance is necessary for survival. These early experiences create what psychologists call internal working models of relationships that emphasize independence and emotional self-sufficiency. Strong men with avoidant attachment styles may have learned early that expressing pain leads to rejection or dismissal. They develop sophisticated strategies for managing emotions independently and may genuinely believe that self-reliance is superior to seeking support. This attachment style can make them highly effective in certain contexts, but leaves them isolated when facing significant emotional challenges. Disorganized attachment, characterized by inconsistent caregiving and chaotic early relationships, can also contribute to pain concealment in strong men. These individuals may have learned that emotional expression is unpredictable and potentially dangerous, leading them to develop rigid emotional control as a protective strategy. The relationship between attachment style and masculine identity is particularly complex. Cultural messages about masculine self-reliance may reinforce avoidant attachment patterns, creating a perfect storm of psychological and social factors that discourage emotional expression and help-seeking. Redefining strength in psychological terms. One of the most profound psychological insights into why strong men hide their pain involves understanding the paradoxical relationship between strength and vulnerability. Traditional definitions of strength often exclude emotional openness and vulnerability, creating a false dichotomy that forces men to choose between appearing strong and being emotionally authentic. However, psychological research increasingly suggests that true strength requires the ability to experience and express the full range of human emotions, including pain and vulnerability. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability has shown that emotional courage and authenticity are actually signs of strength rather than weakness. The ability to acknowledge pain, seek support, and remain open in the face of uncertainty requires tremendous psychological courage. This redefinition of strength challenges the traditional masculine paradigm and suggests that men who hide their pain may actually be operating from a position of fear rather than strength. The fear of being seen as weak, of losing respect, or of being rejected can drive the concealment of pain, making it a defensive rather than empowered choice. True psychological strength involves what researchers call emotional flexibility, the ability to experience emotions fully while maintaining effective functioning. This includes the capacity to feel pain without being overwhelmed by it, to seek support without feeling diminished, and matching emotional responses to situational demands. The integration challenge. Strong men who hide their pain face what can be termed the integration challenge, the psychological task of incorporating their full emotional experience into their sense of identity. This challenge is particularly difficult because it requires questioning fundamental beliefs about masculinity and strength that may have been central to their self-concept for decades. Integration involves developing what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to recognize and differentiate between various emotional states. Men who have spent years suppressing emotions may have difficulty distinguishing between different types of pain or understanding the messages their emotions are trying to convey. The integration process also requires developing tolerance for emotional ambiguity and contradiction. Strong men may need to learn that they can be both powerful and vulnerable, competent and uncertain, helpful and in need of help. This tolerance for paradox is essential for psychological health, but can feel threatening to those who have built their identity on consistency and invulnerability. Successful integration often involves what therapists call parts work, recognizing that different aspects of the self can coexist without contradiction. A man can acknowledge his strong parts while also honoring his vulnerable parts, understanding that both are essential components of his complete self. The strength in seeking support. One of the most challenging aspects of the integration process for strong men involves reconceptualizing help-seeking as a sign of strength rather than weakness. This cognitive shift requires challenging deeply held beliefs about independence and self-reliance that may have been adaptive in certain contexts but become limiting when facing significant pain. Research in psychology has consistently shown that seeking appropriate support is associated with better mental health outcomes, more effective problem solving, and greater resilience in the face of adversity. Yet strong men often view help seeking as admission of failure or inadequacy, preventing them from accessing resources that could significantly improve their well-being. The reconceptualization of help seeking as strength involves understanding that truly strong individuals recognize their limitations and utilize available resources effectively. Just as physical strength can be enhanced through proper training and nutrition, emotional strength can be developed through connection, support, and professional guidance when needed. This shift also involves recognizing that seeking help is not just beneficial for the individual, but also for those who depend on them. Strong men who take care of their emotional well-being are better equipped to support others and maintain their effectiveness in their various roles and responsibilities. Mental health implications. The psychological consequences of hiding pain are profound and far-reaching. When strong men consistently suppress their emotional experiences, they often develop what researchers call emotional debt, an accumulation of unprocessed feelings that can manifest in various psychological and physical symptoms. Depression is one of the most common consequences of hidden pain among men. However, male depression often presents differently than female depression, with symptoms including irritability, anger, substance abuse, and risk-taking behavior rather than the sadness and withdrawal typically associated with depression. This difference in presentation can make it difficult to recognize and treat depression in strong men who may not fit traditional diagnostic criteria. Anxiety is another frequent consequence, often manifesting as hypervigilance, perfectionism, or compulsive work behaviors. Strong men may develop generalized anxiety about maintaining their image of strength, creating a constant state of psychological tension. This anxiety can be particularly insidious because it may be rationalized as conscientiousness or high standards rather than recognized as a mental health concern. Post-traumatic stress responses can develop when strong men experience significant pain or trauma but feel unable to process these experiences openly. The inability to integrate traumatic experiences can lead to intrusive thoughts, emotional numbing, and hyperarousal symptoms that may go unrecognized because they don't fit stereotypical presentations of PTSD. Substance abuse is often used as a form of self-medication by strong men who have no other outlet for their pain. Alcohol, drugs, or other addictive behaviors may provide temporary relief from emotional distress while maintaining the appearance of strength. However, these coping mechanisms ultimately exacerbate the underlying problems and create additional complications. Relationship and social consequences. The impact of hidden pain extends beyond individual psychological well-being to affect relationships and social connections. When strong men suppress their emotional experiences, they often become emotionally unavailable to their partners, family members, and friends, creating distance and misunderstanding in their most important relationships. Intimate relationships are particularly affected because emotional intimacy requires vulnerability and authentic sharing. Partners of strong men who hide their pain may feel shut out, confused, or rejected. They may interpret the emotional distance as lack of love or commitment, rather than understanding it as a defensive strategy born from pain and fear. Parent-child relationships can also suffer when strong men hide their pain. Children may learn that emotions are dangerous or unwelcome, perpetuating the cycle of emotional suppression across generations. Alternatively, children may become parentified, taking on the role of emotional caretaker for a parent who appears strong but is actually struggling. Professional relationships may be affected as well, particularly in leadership roles. While some aspects of emotional regulation are important for effective leadership, excessive emotional suppression can lead to decreased empathy, poor decision-making, and inability to connect with team members. Leaders who hide their pain may also struggle with delegation and may burn out from taking on too much responsibility. The social consequences extend to community involvement and civic engagement. Strong men who are struggling with hidden pain may withdraw from social activities, volunteer work, or community leadership roles, depriving both themselves and their communities of meaningful connection and contribution. Physical health implications. The mind-body connection ensures that psychological pain that is not processed emotionally often manifests as physical symptoms. Strong men who hide their pain frequently experience what researchers call somatization, the expression of psychological distress through physical symptoms. Chronic stress from emotional suppression can lead to a host of physical health problems, including cardiovascular disease, hypertension, digestive issues, and immune system dysfunction. The constant effort required to maintain emotional control places significant demands on the body's stress response systems, leading to wear and tear over time. Sleep disturbances are common among strong men who hide their pain. The mind's inability to process emotions during waking hours often leads to disrupted sleep patterns, nightmares, or insomnia. Poor sleep quality further exacerbates psychological symptoms and reduces the individual's capacity to cope with ongoing stress. Chronic pain conditions, including headaches, back pain, and muscle tension, are frequently reported by men who suppress emotions. While these conditions may have multiple causes, the psychological component of chronic pain is well established, and emotional suppression can both contribute to and maintain physical pain syndromes. Autoimmune conditions and inflammatory disorders have also been linked to chronic emotional suppression. The body's inflammatory response can be triggered by ongoing psychological stress, leading to conditions such as arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, and other chronic inflammatory conditions. Cross-cultural perspectives on masculine pain expression. The phenomenon of strong men hiding their pain is not universal across all cultures, highlighting the role of cultural factors in shaping emotional expression patterns. Understanding these variations provides important insights into the constructed nature of masculine emotional norms and suggests possibilities for alternative approaches. In some cultures, particularly those with more collectivist orientations, the expression of emotional pain by strong men may be more acceptable when framed in terms of family honor, community responsibility, or spiritual practice. For example, in certain Asian cultures, the concept of saving face may actually encourage men to acknowledge their struggles, when doing so demonstrates their commitment to family or community well-being. Mediterranean cultures often have more acceptance of emotional expression among men, with traditions that include public displays of grief, passionate expressions of love, and open discussion of personal struggles. These cultural patterns suggest that the suppression of pain among strong men is not inevitable, but rather a product of specific cultural values and norms. Indigenous cultures worldwide often have different conceptualizations of strength that include emotional and spiritual dimensions. Many Native American traditions, for example, view the ability to feel deeply and express emotions authentically as signs of spiritual strength and wisdom. These alternative frameworks suggest different possibilities for understanding the relationship between strength and emotional expression. However, globalization and the spread of Western cultural values have begun to influence traditional patterns of masculine emotional expression in many cultures. Young men in various societies may experience conflict between traditional cultural values that allow for emotional expression and modern Western ideals that emphasize emotional suppression. Intersectionality and multiple identities. The experience of hiding pain is further complicated when strong men hold multiple identities that may have different cultural expectations around emotional expression. Race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, and other identity factors create intersecting pressures that can intensify or modify the tendency to conceal pain. Men of color may face particularly complex challenges around emotional expression. Cultural stereotypes about black men, for example, may simultaneously characterize them as both threatening and vulnerable, creating contradictory pressures around emotional expression. The strong black man stereotype can make it particularly difficult for African American men to acknowledge pain or seek help, as doing so may be seen as confirming negative stereotypes about weakness or instability. Latino men may navigate between cultural concepts of machismo, which traditionally emphasizes emotional stoicism, and caballerismo, which includes values of emotional expressiveness and family connection. These competing cultural frameworks can create internal conflict about appropriate emotional expression. Gay men may face additional complications around emotional expression as they navigate both traditional masculine norms and alternative masculine expressions within LGBTQ+ communities. The intersection of sexual orientation and masculinity can create unique challenges and opportunities around emotional authenticity. Socioeconomic factors also play a significant role. Working-class men may feel additional pressure to maintain emotional stoicism as a form of psychological protection in economically uncertain environments. Conversely, men with higher socioeconomic status may feel that their success depends on maintaining an image of invulnerability and control. Generational differences. Generational cohort effects significantly influence how strong men approach emotional expression and pain concealment. Men who came of age during different historical periods have been exposed to varying cultural messages about masculinity and emotional expression. Older generations of men, particularly those who lived through World War II, the Great Depression, or other historical traumas, may have learned that emotional suppression was literally a matter of survival. These men may have developed coping mechanisms that were adaptive in their historical context, but become problematic in contemporary situations that require different emotional skills. Baby boomer men grew up during a period of significant social change, but may have received mixed messages about emotional expression. While the cultural revolutions of the 1960s and 1970s challenged traditional gender roles, many men from this generation still internalized earlier messages about masculine emotional restraint. Generation X men experienced the beginning of changes in masculine ideals, but may have received inconsistent modeling around emotional expression. They may struggle with competing values around traditional masculinity and more contemporary approaches to emotional health. Millennial and Generation Z men have grown up with more awareness of mental health issues and may have greater acceptance of emotional expression and help-seeking. However, they may still struggle with earlier socialization messages and may face unique pressures related to social media and contemporary economic challenges. Individual therapeutic modalities. Addressing the psychological patterns that lead strong men to hide their pain requires specialized therapeutic approaches that acknowledge the unique challenges faced by this population. Traditional therapy models may need to be adapted to account for masculine socialization patterns and the specific barriers that prevent men from seeking and engaging in mental health treatment. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can be particularly effective for strong men because it focuses on practical problem solving and skills development rather than extensive emotional exploration. CBT approaches can help men identify and challenge the cognitive distortions that maintain pain concealment, such as catastrophic thinking about the consequences of showing vulnerability, or black and white thinking about strength and weakness. Acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, offers another promising approach by helping men develop psychological flexibility and acceptance of their full range of emotional experiences. ACT techniques can help strong men learn to tolerate difficult emotions without immediately suppressing them, while also clarifying their values and taking committed action toward meaningful goals. Mindfulness-based interventions can be particularly valuable for men who have become disconnected from their emotional experiences. These approaches can help strong men develop greater awareness of their internal states and learn to observe their emotions without immediately judging or suppressing them. Narrative therapy approaches can help strong men rewrite their personal stories to include more nuanced understandings of strength and vulnerability. By exploring the cultural and family messages that have shaped their beliefs about masculinity, men can begin to author new stories that allow for more authentic emotional expression. Somatic approaches, including body-based therapies, can be especially important for men who have learned to suppress emotions so effectively that they have lost touch with physical sensations associated with feelings. These approaches can help reconnect the mind and body and develop greater emotional awareness. Group therapy and support systems. Group therapy can provide unique benefits for strong men who hide their pain, offering opportunities to connect with others who share similar struggles and to practice vulnerability in a supportive environment. However, group approaches must be carefully designed to account for masculine socialization patterns and the specific barriers that prevent men from engaging in group processes. Men's therapy groups can provide a safe space for exploring emotional experiences without the perceived threat of judgment from women or the complexity of mixed gender dynamics. These groups can help normalize the experience of emotional struggle among men and provide modeling of healthy emotional expression. Support groups specifically designed for men in leadership positions or with high levels of responsibility can address the unique challenges faced by strong men. These groups can explore the tensions between professional obligations and personal needs and develop strategies for maintaining effectiveness while also addressing emotional well-being. Psychoeducational groups can provide information about the psychological and physical consequences of emotional suppression while teaching practical skills for emotional regulation and expression. These groups can be particularly appealing to men who prefer structured, educational approaches to personal growth. Peer support programs can connect strong men with others who have successfully navigated similar challenges. These relationships can provide both practical advice and emotional support while demonstrating that it's possible to maintain strength while also acknowledging vulnerability. Online support communities can provide additional resources for men who may be geographically isolated or who prefer the anonymity of digital communication. These platforms can offer 24/7 support and connection with others who understand the specific challenges of hiding pain while maintaining an image of strength. Systemic and cultural interventions. Addressing the tendency for strong men to hide their pain requires interventions that go beyond individual therapy to address the systemic and cultural factors that maintain these patterns. These broader interventions can help create environments that support emotional authenticity and help-seeking among men. Workplace mental health programs specifically designed for men can address the cultural factors that prevent help-seeking in professional environments. These programs might include education about the signs of stress and depression in men, training for managers on how to support male employees, and the development of employee assistance programs that are marketed and delivered in ways that appeal to men. Educational interventions in schools can help address masculine socialization patterns from an early age. Programs that teach emotional literacy, challenge rigid gender roles, and provide positive modeling of emotional expression can help prevent the development of problematic patterns around pain concealment. Media literacy programs can help men critically examine the cultural messages they receive about masculinity and emotional expression. By analyzing the portrayal of men in media and identifying unrealistic standards, men can begin to question the assumptions that drive their own behavior. Community-based interventions can work to change cultural norms around masculine emotional expression. These might include public awareness campaigns, community education programs, and the development of male-friendly mental health resources. Healthcare provider training can help medical and mental health professionals better recognize and address the unique ways that men experience and express psychological distress. This training can help providers identify depression and anxiety in men who may not present with typical symptoms and can improve the engagement of men in mental health treatment. Redefining masculine strength. The path forward for strong men who hide their pain involves a fundamental redefinition of what it means to be strong. This redefinition must acknowledge that true strength includes emotional courage, the ability to be vulnerable when appropriate, and the wisdom to seek support when needed. Emotional courage involves the willingness to face difficult emotions rather than avoiding or suppressing them. This courage is not about becoming emotional or losing control, but rather about having the strength to experience the full range of human emotions while maintaining the ability to function effectively. Authentic strength involves alignment between internal experience and external expression. Rather than maintaining a facade that may be inconsistent with internal reality, authentic strength allows for congruence between feelings and actions, creating a more integrated and sustainable approach to life. Relational strength recognizes that human beings are inherently social creatures who thrive in connection with others. This understanding challenges the myth of total self-reliance and acknowledges that strong relationships and support systems actually enhance rather than diminish individual strength. Adaptive strength involves flexibility and responsiveness to changing circumstances. Rather than rigid adherence to a single approach, adaptive strength allows for different strategies in different situations, including the ability to be vulnerable when vulnerability serves a constructive purpose. Developing emotional intelligence. The development of emotional intelligence represents a crucial step for strong men who want to move beyond pain concealment toward emotional authenticity. Emotional intelligence involves 4 key components: self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and relationship management. Self-awareness involves developing the ability to recognize and understand one's own emotions as they occur. For men who have spent years suppressing emotions, this may require patience and practice as they learn to identify subtle emotional cues and differentiate between different feeling states. Self-regulation involves the ability to manage emotions effectively without suppressing them entirely. This includes developing healthy coping strategies, stress management techniques, and the ability to express emotions appropriately in different contexts. Social awareness involves recognizing and understanding the emotions of others. As men become more comfortable with their own emotional experiences, they often develop greater empathy and ability to connect with others' feelings. Relationship management involves using emotional awareness to build and maintain healthy relationships. This includes effective communication, conflict resolution, and the ability to provide and receive emotional support. Building supportive communities. Creating change in patterns of pain concealment requires building communities that support emotional authenticity and challenge traditional masculine norms. These communities can provide the social support and cultural context necessary for sustained change. Male mentorship programs can connect men who have learned to balance strength with vulnerability with those who are still struggling with emotional suppression. These relationships can provide modeling, support, and practical guidance for navigating the challenges of emotional authenticity. Father-son programs can help break intergenerational patterns of emotional suppression by providing opportunities for men to model healthy emotional expression for their sons and to heal their own relationships with their fathers. Professional development programs can help create workplace cultures that support emotional well-being among men. These programs can challenge the assumption that emotional suppression is necessary for professional success and provide alternative models of effective leadership. Community support organizations can create spaces where men can connect with others, share their experiences, and develop the skills necessary for emotional authenticity. These organizations can provide both formal programming and informal opportunities for connection and growth. The phenomenon of strong men hiding their pain represents one of the most poignant and problematic aspects of contemporary masculine psychology. This pattern, deeply rooted in cultural expectations, early socialization experiences, and psychological defense mechanisms, create significant suffering for individual men while also limiting their capacity for authentic connection and effective functioning. Understanding why strong men hide their pain requires acknowledging the complex interplay of psychological, social, and cultural factors that create and maintain these patterns. From early childhood socialization that teaches boys to suppress emotions, to adult context that rewards stoicism and punish vulnerability, men receive consistent messages that strength and emotional expression are incompatible. The psychological mechanisms that enable pain concealment, including cognitive reappraisal, emotional suppression, compartmentalization, and various defense mechanisms, can be adaptive in certain contexts but become problematic when used chronically and inflexibly. These mechanisms, while protecting men from immediate discomfort or social judgment, often lead to significant long-term consequences for mental health, physical well-being, and relationship satisfaction. The paradox of strength and vulnerability reveals that true psychological strength actually requires the ability to experience and express the full range of human emotions. Men who hide their pain may believe they are demonstrating strength, but they may actually be operating from a position of fear and psychological fragility. Genuine strength involves emotional courage, authenticity, and the wisdom to seek support when needed. The consequences of hidden pain extend far beyond individual suffering to affect families, communities, and society as a whole. When strong men suppress their emotions, they often become emotionally unavailable to those who depend on them, perpetuate harmful patterns across generations, and fail to model healthy emotional expression for others. cultural variations in masculine emotional expression demonstrate that the suppression of pain among strong men is not inevitable, but rather a product of specific cultural values and norms. Understanding these variations provides hope for alternative approaches and suggests that change is possible when cultural expectations shift.